Who are we in this life? What is our true legacy? Our purpose? Who do we wish to be? And what do we choose to leave behind? That is the topic of today's episode. Hello everyone, welcome back to Fit Foodie Film Takes with your host, your girl Fit Foodie, and Henrietta. Say hi, Henrietta. And Speed Limit. Say hi, Speed Limit. And today we're talking about 1986, The Fly. Now, The Fly is one of my favorite Cronenberg films, and not because it's specifically scary. It's horrifying for sure, and it can get downright disgusting. It's funny because this is one of my sister's least favorite films, and she will never watch this movie again because of how disgusting it is to her. But at the end of the film, I couldn't help but cry because the end is just so tragic and unsatisfying. And I want to take a deeper look into why that is. Because when we look past the main plot, when we really go into the subtext, what is the story telling us? What is it really revealing? Is it losing ourselves, who we think we are? Or is it the feeling of never knowing, never finding out, and disappearing from importance altogether? In this film, I'll be talking about disability, disease, and abortion. So if that's not something you wish to entertain today, I understand. Protect your mentals, and I'll see you in the next video. The Fly is a 1986 American science fiction body horror film directed and co-written by David Cronenberg. The film stars Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, and John Getz. Loosely based on George Langland's 1957 short story of the same name and the 1958 film of the same name. The Fly tells of an eccentric scientist who, after one of his experiments goes wrong, slowly turns into a fly hybrid creature. Cronenberg made this film after watching his mother pass from cancer and the transformation she went through before her death. I learned this from the Eli Roth History of Horror, and it was fascinating because even though this is about Brundle, we see a lot of things in the view of Gina Davis. Her name is Veronica, who has to watch his downfall. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing every part of The Fly in chronological order, but I will be hitting on the different themes that are involved in this film. So, who is Brundle? He is a young, up-and-coming scientist who invests all his time in his work of creating a teleportation device. He wants to change the world. He wants to change life itself and how everyone lives it. And he's willing to do most anything to make it work. That includes using himself as a test subject, which ultimately leads to his demise. Variety of different topics, if you will. One is disability. Everyone on this planet, if you live long enough, will become disabled at some point in your life. Needing glasses, ADHD, arthritis, losing a limb, etc. We all at some point will face it at one time or another, especially the longer that we live. But learning to deal with your body changing is interesting to witness in horror, which is why I really love the horror genre, because it explores different topics like this in a way that is entertaining but also thought-provoking. And another reason is because we do our best in modern society to create and invent what we can to assist those disabilities. Next, it touches a bit on a disease. Now, having a disease is much harder to deal with, especially if it's terminal. And in Brundle's case, that's exactly what it is. Even if Veronica didn't shoot him at the very end, there is no way he would have survived any longer as this humanoid fly hybrid. And what captured me more in the film is how Veronica, Gina Davis's character, is watching Brundle leave his human form to a monstrous one. And I think that's the best kind of metaphor for those who wither away through a terminal illness. For example, it's grotesque, it's ugly, it's hard to witness, hard to process, especially from caretakers and loved ones. And it shows how Veronica is lost and helpless because she doesn't know how to help him. There's nothing she can do to help him. And she does her best to be there for him, but her internal struggle of wanting to be there for him, but also at the same time wanting to stay away, are real feelings that we may try to suppress when we're faced with these real world situations, which is why it's so heartbreaking to me. Again, this is a horror film, but it's more of a tragedy. It really tugs at your heartstrings, especially at the end. And because of that, Veronica is the one who sells this tragedy to me. Yes, we can empathize with Brundle in his situation. Him trying to keep his hopes up, him trying to continue to be that scientist to observe and record all the physical changes he's experiencing. But it's the connection between the observed and the observer that hits a lot harder. I feel like if Veronica wasn't in this space, this film would be totally different if we just saw everything from the perspective of Brundle. I really do think having the outside witnessing of a tragedy makes a tragedy that much worse. Next, I want to talk about a very sensitive subject of abortion. So if you got through this part and you don't want to talk about, listen, consume this information, I completely understand. I'll leave a timestamp so you can skip ahead past this part. But that's an interesting facet into this film that Cronenberg touches on. And that's also why I really enjoy this film, because I feel like talking about abortion in horror films is one of the best things you can do because of how taboo that subject is. And I like how he hits it in this film. So, after spending some sexy time with Brundle, after he mixed his genes with the fly genes, after he teleports himself, Veronica finds out that she is pregnant with his child. And a topic like this, especially in the 80s, is bold, and I love it for that. And Veronica wants an abortion immediately. She is a young, single working woman who is figuring out her life. She hooked up with Brundle a couple of times, but she wasn't intending to be a mother. She wasn't intending to be a wife. She wasn't intending on anything to happen, just to have some fun. Finding out about Brundle's situation and knowing she was having a baby is an automatic no-go. And I can empathize with that. There is no situation to where she has stated she wanted to be a mom, where she talked about being a mother at all. It was an accident that happened, and she said, get this thing out of me. And how they showed in a horrific dream of her giving birth to a larvae. And I found out that Cronenberg was the doctor in the film, and I thought that was really cool, just side note. And I think that her giving birth to a larvae is a great representation of the anxiety and the terror that comes with discovering that you're pregnant. Again, a great metaphor, because in all actuality, giving birth, having a child, being pregnant, that is a, what's the word? Parasite living within you. It is a foreign body that is consuming the life literally out of you. So her having that anxiety, that fear of giving birth to yeah, yeah. And I just want to touch on that. That is not her identity. Being with Brundle, having this kid, having a kid that might, and that's another thing, especially touching on disability. I feel like the idea of giving birth to a larvae, that's a lot of struggles that women deal with what if this child comes out disabled? What if this child comes out a certain type of way and I have to care for it? If she did decide to keep the baby, for example, what would that look like for her? What would she be raising? And in that case, would it even be a viable birth? Would she go through a hard pregnancy just for it to come out and not live? So many questions that in reality, normal society, I think a lot of people don't have discussions about, which is why I think horror in general is such a great genre, because it helps us explore these different topics. And then when Brundle finds out that Veronica is pregnant, he decides he's going to kidnap Veronica in order to convince her to keep the baby. And this is what I really want to hone in on with this topic. When Brundle was talking about keeping baby Brundle, that's what he called it, it wasn't about Veronica, her feelings, wanting to build with her. It was about keeping a part of himself, to be significant, to live on as a scientist would want to. You see what you're catching on to what I'm saying? As most men would want. But he didn't want to be a father. He never expressed wanting to be a father, wanting to be in a relationship. His children, his baby was his work on creating this teleportation device. And I feel like he knew deep down, he knew he was going to die. And this shows the selfishness of men. And I know I have a habit of talking about men on this channel in not a great light, but this is reality. And I think this is the subtext that Cronenberg wanted to touch on as well. How there is a selfishness that comes with Brundle in his work, and how for him, especially with a lot of men, because I've heard this before, they want a need for a lineage, a legacy, an importance, and they feel like they can create that and get that through a woman who can actually create. Women don't need a magical machine to create anything. We are the magical machine. She doesn't need to build a machine to create a legacy because she can birth it herself. And though this is my opinion, I think that's the main point of the film to me. How absurd it is for men to try to create, to try to reproduce when women do that naturally. We women were born scientists, okay? We were born to create if that's what we want to do. Okay, that is not our sole purpose, but that is what we are able to. And Brundle wanted to be part of it in his own way, either making a machine, a teleportation device that worked, or having a child to be produced for him to continue on his legacy, to feel some sort of significance before he died. Either way, whether we're talking about Brundle as a selfish scientist man or Veronica as a torn, pregnant, distraught woman, the ending of the film made me feel gutted because there is no happy ending and there is no resolve. Veronica killed her baby daddy at his request, shot him in the head with a shotgun. Her ex-lover is missing his hand that Brundle threw up on and dissolved. And she is still pregnant and heavily traumatized by this whole event. No one wins, all because a man decided he wanted to create. And I think we should sit in that. The Fly, again, it is the subtext. If you just watch the film, it's entertaining, it's gross, the body horror is on point, especially for the 80s. Amazing craftsmanship. Everyone, Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, like, yes, magic was made. But if we really look, if we take off the sci-fi and the horror, what is it talking about? Relationships. It's talking about how we try to hold on to be something. Veronica wanted to be, or she is a reporter, and she wants to be good at her job. She has a career focus in mind, and so does Brundle, and they come together and they align. And I think that's what happens in most relationships between heterosexual men and women. They come together off of a love and a focus, and we align. And then when things go too far, when life has other plans, things get in a way and it can cause such destruction. And again, the first time that I watched it years ago, it made me weep. It made me weep. Just unfortunate things that just cascaded in the way that they did. And again, touching on the topics of disability, disease, abortion, just all in one movie for the 80s. Like, just outstanding. I would, if you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it in full. Let me know what you feel about that in the comments below, because it's heavy themes in such a almost unserious way. And I think that's why I enjoy watching that film, because the depths and the layers are definitely there. Thank you everyone for watching this video and supporting me by commenting down below and or liking and subscribing to my channel. Speed Limit and I and Henrietta had a great time going over this film with you all. So any comments, likes, suggestions for any future videos, I truly do appreciate it. Let me know what y'all are thinking in the comments below. Make sure to eat well, drink well, rest well, move your body, and until next time, ciao. That is the topic of today's link. What? Yeah? Hello, Jumin. Thank you.